There it is. This special meeting is called back to order. Will the secretary please note that all board members are present? The first item on the agenda is 3B, motion to adjourn the executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn the executive session?
Second.
Who did the second? There's a motion made by Board Member Marquez and a second by Board Member Para. On that motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. The motion carries. The regular board meeting is called to order. Will the secretary please note that all board members are present? Please note that today's meeting is being live streamed. Also, please note that we have a Spanish interpreter available in the back of the room. Please feel free to call on Ms. Para.
Yes. Buenas noches a todos. Si necesitan intérprete en español, favor de mirar a Joel. Joel se encuentra atrás del cuarto. Ahí está. Thank you.
Gracias. The next item on the agenda is 1C, Pledge of Allegiance, and a moment of silence. We will stand as Board Member Marquez leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing while we have a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 1D, Land Acknowledgement Statement. Please remain seated as Clerk Napa reads the PXU Land Acknowledgement Statement.
The Phoenix Union High School District is responsible for and committed to creating educational environments that prioritize the achievements of Native American students. We are committed to making their cultural identity visible by acknowledging that our school district resides upon the ancestral lands of the original caretakers, the Hohokam, ancestors of the Akinra Otham, Unk Akitran Otham, Thono Otham, and Akchin. These sovereign nations are presently known as the Gila River Indian Community, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, the Ono Otham Nation, and Akchin Indian Community. This formal acknowledgement is dedicated to the 22 sovereign nations of Arizona. PXU understands the importance of providing reparations through truth-telling. We recognize the historical injustices not traditionally taught in the classroom and are committed to practices prioritizing Native American knowledge, history, representation, and healing. We commit with an open mind to always respect the land, its histories, and its ancestors.
Thank you. Our next item is art display. Cesar Chavez High School proudly presents student artwork from their visual arts department. The students featured on display represent the artwork from beginning, advanced, and advanced placement art from the following courses: drawing and painting, digital photography, explorations in art, and ceramics. Students in the beginning level courses spend the school year learning the technical foundations, such as the elements and principles of design, composition, and the use of different tools and processes. Cesar Chavez students are also encouraged to examine the world around them and develop creative solutions through visual expression. In addition to the rigorous introduction and advanced classes, our AP art program is one of the strongest in the district, with students consistently receiving perfect scores year after year. At Cesar Chavez High School, we believe art can be learned by any student at any level, and we encourage our kids to take risks, constructively critique the art process, and learn to respect and understand the visual world from a cultural and personal perspective. Please take a moment to view and enjoy the various artwork created by our amazing PXU students. Thank you to the Cesar Chavez Art Department for providing us with all the beautiful work displayed here this evening. The next item on the agenda is 2A, recognitions and accomplishments. Tonight we will recognize 12 outstanding PXU educators for earning or recertifying their national board certification. Dr. G.
President Ross and Governing Board and Phoenix Union Community, I will turn it over in a moment to Senator Alston, who's going to read the official script. I just wanted to, on behalf of the district, number one, congratulate our 12. You'll hear more about them in a moment. And as you'll hear, part of this on the script, part not, that National Board Certified, the certification itself is the highest honor in Phoenix Union. We value that not only through hiring and support, but also stipends. We think it's such an important certification that there's a stipend associated with it. And then the last thing that I'll say is that Phoenix Union's proud to be a leader in this area in the state. We have more high school National Board Certified teachers than any district in Arizona. And we're only 2 teachers away from having the most National Board Certified teachers of any district in Arizona. And so we're very, very proud. We have a lot in the pipeline coming. And as you will hear a little bit tonight, you can get certified the first time, and then you have to re-up and recertify over the years, and they're both as big of an honor as it is even just the first time. So with that, Senator Alston.
Consider the teaching profession's highest honor. National Board certification is earned based on the National Board for Professional Teaching standards. Teachers must demonstrate that they meet the high and rigorous standards for what accomplished professionals should know and do before earning board certification. Only 2% of K-12 teachers in the U.S. are nationally board certified. In Phoenix Union, we are proud of the 43 educators across the district who have earned this prestigious certification. Each National Board Certified teacher in Phoenix Union earns a $3,000 stipend for their dedication to the art of teaching our amazing students. Earning National Board Certification involves a rigorous process that can take up to 3 years to complete. Research shows that students in board-certified classrooms outperform their peers in achievement tests. Schools and districts with a high concentration of National Board Certification teachers see improvements in school culture, collaboration, and teacher retention. This year, 2 Phoenix Union teachers earned National Board Certification for the first time. Please join us as we congratulate Pooja Aurora for earning Adolescent Young Adult Math Certification, and Renata Perez for earning Early Adolescent Young Adult CTE certification. This year, 10 Phoenix Union teachers recertified as National Board Certified educators. Please join us as we congratulate Tori Anderson, Richard Bailey, Shannon Harsh, Robert Baines, Scott Black, Reno Edgington, Laura Motush, Soshana Crozier, Roshana Dubell, and Nikki Karadresas. Congratulations to each of our National Board Certified teachers.
Board, let's join them up there for a photo board.
Okay,
Okay, say-
actually, they're going to say a couple words first.
No pressure.
No, I think Rashani is up there too.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rashani. And I'm also a National Board Candidate Support Provider. On behalf of the National Board Certified Teachers and the National Board Candidate Support Providers, I would like to express our gratitude to our board members, our executive team, and Dr. Geston for your support and recognition of our efforts. Your encouragement and belief in us made all the difference in our journey to become nationally board certified. The National Board Certification process is both rigorous and rewarding as it forces us to be reflective of our teaching practices. By allowing us to enhance our skills through the certification process, you have directly impacted the quality of education our students receive. Your belief in our abilities and dedication to professional growth has inspired us to continue to strive for excellence in the classroom to guarantee quality seats for our students. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Strong. I am a candidate support provider as well, and I am national board certified. I certified in 2015, so I'm coming up on my maintenance of certification also. And I just wanted to give you just a few more additional bits of data from that Dr. Geston shared. We have 10 people who have maintained certification out of the 180 total in the state. If you do that math really quickly, that means we account for 5.5% of all of the teachers who maintained, which is really pretty amazing. And we have 43 candidates who are currently pursuing national board certification. It is a very rigorous process that includes 4 different components, one of which is a test, a content knowledge test, and the other 3 are portfolio-based, where you have to write approximately 15 pages and compile all sorts of evidence, record yourself, watch those recordings, which is always the most fun part, and also look at how you are as a professional, how you are in your classroom, but then how you also work within collaborative teams at your site level, at the district level, and even at the state and national level. So it is really a pretty amazing thing, and as Rashani stated, it is all of our people who have achieved or maintained certification, a lot of that is due to your support. We are able to have 5 candidate support providers. We go through additional training with the AZ K-12 Center, and we offer twice a month small group candidate support, so they can bounce ideas, we can edit papers, we can just be there as an extra partner to help them through the process. And then we also, this year, because maintenance of certification now is every 5 years, we also have a specific small group support to help people with their maintenance of their certification, because it is just a little bit different when you maintain versus when you initially achieve. So we just wanted to thank you for all of your support and let you know that it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we'll come out and take a picture, and then if there are any questions or comments from the board, we'll do that right after, but we'll take a picture.
Members, do we have any questions about our recognitions that just happened? No questions?
I just have a question.
Yes.
How do you guys think about like recruiting a diverse candidate pool for National Board Certification, and how can we be supportive to encourage teachers of color to pursue this opportunity at the district?
President Ross, and we have a rule in board meetings. If you don't have a good answer, it's okay to say you don't have a good answer. So not just this question, any question. No, you're not. They're not put on the spot. It's totally fine. Or if you have ideas that maybe we haven't tried yet, for sure.
So the question was, how do we encourage people of diverse candidates? I believe the way to encourage them is to go back to the idea of quality seats for our students and the idea of guaranteed viable curriculum. I believe a teacher who really has the best interest for their students will understand that this process makes them a better teacher and makes them be that teacher for those students, to provide those students with those opportunities that are our mission and our vision.
Thank you.
One other thing that I didn't mention before, there is also a pre-candidacy course. So it is a course that was developed by the AZ K-12 Center that we are trained in facilitating, and we are able to facilitate it here in Phoenix Union. We do it once in the fall and once in the spring. And it is also a professional growth opportunity. So when they complete, they do get 2 professional growth credits. That helps to potentially move people over on the pay scale, give them credit for their requirements that they need every year and for recertification and all of that. And I think just advertising that maybe a little bit more in a little bit different places so that people know that that's an option. We start one next Tuesday, shameless plug. And we actually have, I think we're up to 30, close to 30 people signed up.
Great.
So, and we had about 15 complete in the fall. So yeah, just continuing those opportunities and making sure that people are aware of them.
I love it. Thank you so much. And if we can be helpful, so I ask because I always want to be helpful, right? So if I can help with spreading the word or sharing, I think it's such a critical opportunity. And to your point about like, this is about quality education and offering high quality seats across Phoenix Union. So the more that we can make this program more accessible and get more candidates in, however I can support you, please don't hesitate.
Very
Yeah.
quickly, and that to add to that, what she said in terms of support, we also want our teachers who are going through the process to know that they have the support not only from us, but all of those who have gone through the process, and so know that they're never alone in this. And we appreciate the support you give. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you all. Thank you very much. The next item is 3A, reports from employee organizations. Mr. Esteban Flemons? Flemons. Well, I don't know how to read today. Mr. Esteban Flemons, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, CTA Vice President.
Hello, President Ross, governing board members, Dr. Gutston. Yeah, it's going to be a little on the low side. Thank you for having me here. Esteban Flemons, CTA Vice President, and I will be reporting tonight for the Classroom Teachers Association as well as the Phoenix Union Foundation. Dr. Coleman and Ms. Taylor do apologize for not being here, but they are getting ready for the Phoenix Union Foundation Gala that'll be tomorrow night at the Carving Museum. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone there. From CTA, we'd like to report CTA members have been heavily involved in spring interviews. We just completed our job fair last weekend, and we were really excited with the new members we are going to bring into the PXU family as educators. So we are excited about that, as well as other district level committees in order to provide high quality seats for all students here in our district. In addition, CTA has been part of the interest-based negotiations, or IBN, and we look forward to bringing some updates for language for our professional agreement to this body in May for your approval. From the Phoenix Union Foundation, again, the gala dinner is going to be on Friday at the George Washington Carver Museum and Cultural Center. Doors will open at 5:30, and we hope to see people there to help raise funds for our scholarship opportunities here in the district and to carry out the foundation's mission to strengthen our community by investing in student success. So with that, that is all that we have, and we really look forward. Hope to see many of the board members there next week, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the future. Thank you very much.
Ms. Anastasia Jimenez, CEA President.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, President Ross and governing board members. Thank you again for having us and creating the space for our associations to report. So this evening, I don't have too much to report out, but again, with my theme of recognizing our ESP, or Educational Support Professional Career Families. So for the month of February, CEA is recognizing our transportation services, or Educational Support Professionals, otherwise known as ESPs. And so our ESPs, transportation ESPs, are critical to our students' well-being, learning, and success. Many of our families rely heavily on our transportation ESPs to ensure that their students are getting to and from school safely. For most of our transportation ESPs, they're the first smiling faces that they see in the day. So from servicing our big yellow buses to ensure that they reach our families in the Gila River community, to transporting our dual enrollment students, to meeting the needs of our ESS families by doing door-to-door pickups, to making sure our McKinney-Vento students can meet their attendance goals. The lives of our students are in the hands of our transportation ESPs every day. And for some of our ESPs even, they finish their regular workday duties to then further support our district by picking up transportation routes. So they're definitely a committed group. So to piggyback on last month's topic of safety, I'd like to challenge the community, our staff, and you all governing board members, that when the conversations of safety comes up again, that you remember our ESPs, because again, not all learning takes place in the classroom. For our transportation staff, it's on a bus or on a van or even at our district support facility. And those ESPs include our bus drivers, our van drivers, bus assistants, AM and PM service assistants, dispatchers, driver trainees, safety trainers, vehicle mechanics, and even equipment operators. So from CEA to all our transportation ESPs, thank you for your commitment and to the safety and success of our students and our community. So thank you. If you have any questions. Good. Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. John Doherty, ADA President-elect.
Good evening. I'll pull up Mr. Flemons here. President Ross, members of the board, Dr. Gustin, executive team, and Phoenix Union community. Thank you, and we'd like to share as administrators this amazing little thing that took place on Saturday. Once upon a time, there was a job fair, and it was very productive. And so I'd just like to share with you and the public some numbers around that. We had 180 certified applicants at that job fair. It was amazing. And of those 180, 64 were offered letters of intent at the certified level. So we were super excited about that. Also, we interviewed classified employees, and we had 30 applicants, of which 8 were offered a letter of intent. And then we had 13 changes of assignment requests. So we were very happy with that job fair and the effort it took. It couldn't have happened without all the people, administrators, who went over to the student union to do screening interviews. There were 89 of them that day. And so to get those people in the door to even have an interview required that step. So a shout out to all the administrators. Also, a big shout out to all the teachers that were there to help with interviews and bring their expertise and lens to the table as we looked for our next family members in PXU. The unit chairs that were there, instrumental in our process and supporting us in the hiring process. And especially our ESPs, the setup, the teardown, the food, the technology. Like, the job fair doesn't happen without the whole family there. So thank you to everybody for making it a super successful job fair. And to the talent division. for an amazing experience and a smooth process. Also would like to just celebrate the gala coming up, and we look forward to that, having a fun evening, raising money, and supporting the foundation so that they can support our young scholars through scholarships. So we look forward to having a good time there. And then finally, Monday, spring sports starts, practice. So baseball, softball, track and field, tennis, boys volleyball are all coming up, and we look forward to another busy season. And allowing kids opportunities to be connected and belong. And a little bird told me that we're looking forward to a flag football jamboree. So we're testing the waters with an idea out there with around flag football. So we'll be on the lookout for that. And looking forward to all the district tournaments to bring opportunities to our kids and our schools. And then finally, I understand esports is a spring sport. And so we're looking forward to that. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all tomorrow night.
The next item on the agenda is 4A, call to the public. Presentations tonight are limited to maximum of 2 minutes per person, according to ARS 38-431-01H. At the conclusion of the call to the public, members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who address the public body, may ask the staff to review a matter, or may ask that a member be put on a future, be put on a future agenda. However, members may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. I would like to caution members of the audience about commenting on a particular individual and to thank you for not referring to any person by name. Tonight, we have the option for members of the public to participate in person or virtually. We will start with our speakers who registered online. We have 2 requests to speak virtually. Please state your name, indicate the agenda item or topic you wish to speak about, and limit your presentation to 2 minutes. Our first caller is Bianca Cano. Please provide your comment.
And Ms. Cano, if you can, you're online. Sometimes you need to hit *6 in order to unmute and speak. *6.
Okay, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. My name is Bianca Cano. I am the owner of property 8002 South 56th Street. And so right there, there's a street that's owned by Maricopa County. It's called Beverly. And there's so the street is actually children from Betty Fairfax use that as a walkway to get to school faster. And so the kids have, a fence has been put up to stop the children from going. And so what's happening is they're jumping the fence. They've damaged property multiple times. They've broken windows. A couple of years ago, I made a report because children have actually broken in and stole a shotgun of mine. And so this has been an issue for years, and nothing's really happening about it. And so my concern is that somebody's going to get hurt. So because if they've already broken down the fence with their vehicles, it's a wrought iron fence. And so now they're jumping on my property. And if they fall and get hurt, then I'm going to be liable. And so I'm going to be liable. The children are being hurt. Property's being damaged. And it's just like, it's so frustrating because nobody's taking responsibility of how to stop this. So I've called the police, and they've come out and monitored for a week or so. We went to the school to talk about that, and there's no disciplinary actions, nothing. And so the school owns an alley right there, and it's dangerous for children to walk down that alley because somebody is going to get hurt at the end of the day, and I just don't want that. And so my question is, what can we do about this?
Thank you for your comment. Dr. G, will you look into that matter, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rigo Cano. You may address the governing board. Rigo, can you hear us? Oh, no, okay.
We'll wait a second. Sir, we'll give you a few more seconds, *6. Okay, sounds like you're on. All right, try it again, sir.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Rigo. The person who just spoke right now is my sister. I'm actually the one who lives in the house with my fiance, and so it's the same concern. It's just we just want to bring it to you guys' attention because it has been happening for a while now, and we're at a point where we do have that fear to leave the house, and not to like, see the kids, but the fear that we don't know what we'll come home to. If it's gonna be a break-in, because this happened yesterday where they broke into the house, things are stolen. The sheriff department they came, took a report, but they can't do anything because it's, I guess, on the Phoenix side. So there's a lot of back and forth on who has to address it. But my main concern is the safety of my fiance and her kid. The numbers have been increasing. We have a camera, and at work, I would stay looking at the camera because I don't know what's going to happen. My fiance missed work today because she has a fear that they're going to come in again. And in that pathway, it's right behind the racquetball court. She counted the kids today, and she counted 92 kids during school time going through. And so just having that mentality of fear it's very disheartening, especially hearing today what great things students are doing in the different schools. But I'm just asking for support from the schools, and some suggestions I would recommend is perhaps there's a brick wall, perhaps extending that further, or adding security cameras, or even like I'm not sure if they're even bringing the attention to the students that these houses, people do live in them, and they've been here while using our trampoline and breaking our stuff while we're in the house. And so it's just I'm just worried for my family.
Thank you for your comments. Tonight, there were no requests to speak in public. So that concludes tonight's call to the public. The next item is 5A, approval of consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented?
A motion?
There's a motion made by Member Parra and a second made by Member Marquez. On that motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next item is 6A, Superintendent's Report. Dr. G, please provide your report at this time.
President Ross, members of the board and community, I will run through quite a few slides tonight, but I will be fast. Just wanted to once again congratulate our new governing board. We had a chance to take our first full picture last month. We also had an opportunity as a new governing board to come together and have a governing board retreat, our initial governing board retreat, a chance for us to get to know each other more on a personal level, but also talk about the real work. What's the strategic plan look like? What are the most important data points? We call those key performance indicators or KPIs. What are some of the initiatives that board wants to focus on? Ms. Ross, President Ross and I and our team had a chance to synthesize some of that information. We're going to bring that, our goal is to bring a presentation and a much more clear report back to you in March. But there were some very clear themes during our time together. This is a board that's very passionate about parents and parent engagement. This is a board that also wants to get very serious about student achievement. It was an incredible conversation when governing board says guaranteed and viable curriculum and quality seats matter. That doesn't happen very often in our nation, and so we're really excited that student achievement is a big focus. We also know community outreach, student voice, community voice seem to be another really big theme. This is a board that also understands the importance of freshman transition. We are a high school system. We partner with over 200 K-8 schools that bring nearly 8,000 to 9,000 students to Phoenix Union. How do we transition those students well? And this is also a board that talked about the importance of partnerships, community partnerships, community outreach, strengthening new ones, strengthening current ones, considering new ones. We also heard that safety is a priority. And we all know safety is a very complex item. We'll talk about that a little bit later today, but this board also put a lot of value and a lot of conversation into safety. And there were several other themes, but those were the top ones that really stood out. Again, we will bring next month, and Board Member Ross is going to jump in to this part, and then I'll continue my report.
One of the things that I'm hoping I'm speaking for my fellow board members that we saw or realized during this retreat is the massive undertaking our district and all districts have to provide for our students, because we're not just providing for our students, we're providing for the families. We are so many things as educators now. We are providing food, we're providing clothing, we're trying to figure out how to provide internet. I, as a board member during this retreat, was just overwhelmed with the responsibility that we shoulder. It's amazing and we love doing it, but it's also a lot, and just trying to make sure we navigate how to do all the things well and making sure nothing slips through the cracks, which also makes me take a quick point of privilege to acknowledge all of the hard work that everyone does behind the scenes quietly, our teachers, our everyone, our support staff, our exec team. It's a lot. I've been president for less than a month, and I'm getting so many text messages, and I'm just like, wow, it's a lot of work, and I just want to publicly acknowledge all of the hard work that you all do. It can be a thankless job, and I'm thanking you publicly. Thank you, Dr. G.
Of course. Thank you. And again, if board members have comments and questions at the very end, please, but we wanted to make sure that we shared initial thoughts up front. I just want to run through a handful of things, past, present, and future really quickly. Want to thank everyone involved in our annual PXU Learn Summit. Again, you're going to hear this board and our team hopefully talk more and more about achievement and learning than we have in a long time. This is a chance for us to bring together leaders. And what we're doing, as this governing board knows and the public knows, we've developed a teaching and learning framework. It's the head, heart, hands. And it's really high-quality professional development, trying to get at quality seats. And this was a chance to bring together people that are adopting curriculum, strengthening training. So I want to thank Thea Andrade and Tony Camp and everyone involved in putting this event together. We also had a great college and career fair at Bioscience High School, where students from all across the district came together. This was a mastermind underneath the leadership of Alyssa Tarkington, of some of our lead counselors, to try to really expose our students to college and career. And in many cases, and you'll see an example later, we also have students that want to go into the military. They want to go straight to the workforce. Some want to go to community college. Some want local. Some want to start their own business. And some kids want to go to the most elite colleges in the country. And we want to make sure that we're providing support for every single one of those. And I'll preview a little bit of that at the end. You heard this today. The PXU Spring Job Fair was a great success. We hired a lot of people. And I do also want to particularly thank our CEA, all associations, but CEA. One problem that we had in the past, sometimes we put our own barriers, unnecessary barriers in our own way. We're a big institution. And because of language and process, we were never able to hire ESPs on the spot. There were, they had to come back and do tests and we actually found a way to hire ESPs on the spot and get our own bureaucracy out of the way. And it was our first pilot this year, so I cannot thank CEA for enough. I see Anastasia and our previous president, Ms. Jimenez back there, Vanessa. Thank you for partnering and trying something new and helping all of us get out of our own way to hire as many employees as possible. We did also, as we recruit new employees, but also have current employees, we want to make sure that our entire community knows that we have one of the only fully staffed employee wellness departments in schools in our country. We have managers and social workers to help. So for all of our employees, if you're thinking about coming here, or if you're a current employee, if you ever need anything, please reach out to our talent department. We have an employee wellness individuals ready to help at all times. Also want to congratulate Mr. Franco and his team, Phoenix Union, you know, we've dramatically increased and improved marketing and outreach. They received 7 awards of excellence at the statewide convening and 3 merit awards. And they're just doing remarkable work, as you all know, and I know we've had a chance to compliment them many times. It is also Black History Month, so I want to thank all of our principals who are prioritizing this on campus. I do think every year we say, I say almost the same thing because I think it's important we remember this, that we shouldn't just talk about Black history in one month. Black history is our history. Right? We shouldn't talk about Mexican-American history or Latino history or Native history. It is our history. So although we take time during these months to point it out, it's also important that we all understand that it's all of our history, and we cover this every month. But do want to thank everyone in advance for making sure that on campuses we have guest speakers and opportunities and assemblies to celebrate Black History Month. And it's also Career and Technical Education Month. That's something, CTE, something very important to this board. That is also a theme that came up in our board retreat. And so we will continue to promote and highlight CTE, but I did just want to share a quick video that the state put out a competition for students to create a video to promote CTE. And our students actually were recognized and won statewide awards. And just want to give you a glimpse into a video from our students. Yeah, and I'm actually going to show 2.
As a teenager, you start to think about your future career path. You may choose nursing, maybe software development, or perhaps filmmaking is what speaks to you. Whatever the case may be, the road to your career seems to be far. But what if I told you there was a faster way to get there? With CTE, you can. CTE offers dozens of different programs where you can start gaining experience in your dream field while working for your high school diploma. Gain the education you need for the future that awaits you with CTE.
Yeah, and then video number 2, they're just quick, they're both short. Again, that was created by students and won statewide awards for that work, so thank you again to them. We'll get back to my slides on screen. Give me a second. Okay. It's that time of year where we give out employee contracts. They will come out this month. We're now in February, so the middle of the month, we'll give out employee contracts for next year. Thank you, Governing Board, for your work with us on prioritizing salary. We have a new salary schedule, you know, giving a step for our employees next month. Thank you to our talent team and technology and everyone involved in employee contracts. Every month, I very quickly try to just give you a flavor of what's happening with students across the district, with club sports and activities. We have several of our teams that are ranked across the state in both boys and girls sports, as you see, just a highlight there. Not only are we ranked across the state, we have a lot of teams win a bunch of competitions. We have girls wrestling, congrats to the Chavez team. Alhambra boys soccer won a major tournament recently. Girls basketball at Cesar Chavez recently won a tournament. You also may know that, you may or may not know that Betty Fairfax High School girls basketball team is actually one of the best in the nation. And I think they have a very tough game tonight at McClintock, but they are nationally ranked at Betty Fairfax High School. We did also want to thank, this was on the consent agenda tonight, but received a $150,000 donation. Now that the Super Bowl's in town, have really incredible partners come in. You see some of the people that were involved in this donation, but work at Camelback High School on their athletic facilities. Thank you to Principal Arndt and all of those involved. Metro Tech, another kind of cool thing. Metro Tech was awarded and was named a safe sports school. They won an award. They're the only safe sports school in Maricopa County. I know you'll say, what about our other schools? That doesn't mean they're not safe. But this is recognition for athletic health care. So, concussions and injuries, and they actually were named a safe sports school, the only in Maricopa County. We don't just do sports, as you know. We do arts. This board, this district has always prioritized the arts. We have the Greater Phoenix Music Festival occurred earlier this month, where we bring together all of our schools to perform. It's a great event. Another cool new thing that happened, girls were always making sure that girls know that STEM fields and hands-on careers are an opportunity for them, and we sent 23 girls to an auto tech institute recently from Metro Tech High School. And then I know this board's mentioned Devin Booker before and some great opportunities, but there was a basketball court dedication where a lot of our students, especially at Bostrom and Carl Hayden, got to come and be a part of a Chicanos por la Causa community dedication. And you see a picture of Devin Booker. He even played basketball with our students. And so that was super cool. And then just quick 2 highlights of employees. Want to congratulate Chief Development Officer Juvenal Lopez, who was officially appointed to a City of Phoenix Workforce Development Board. So he's a board member now at the City of Phoenix. Congratulations, sir, for representing Phoenix Union. And then we've highlighted Dr. Trevelyan a few times over the years. Dr. Trevelyan is heavily engaged in Olympics and pre-Olympics and training all across the country. She herself was an incredible athlete, is an incredible athlete still, I'm sure, Dr. T, but just wanted to recognize that she was just highlighted in a national publication. And then finally, just want to wrap up with some brief updates. One, it was National School Choice Week. I want to remind our broader community that's not just a charter movement with choice. Choice happens in Phoenix Union. We have 23 current schools. Next year, we'll have 24 UC. We will launch a new school next year in our portfolio, Phoenix Educator Preparatory, where we will produce and build and develop the next generation educator. That's counselor, social worker, teacher, and other potential job families in the future. Thank you to alumna Dr. Elena Adams, our founding principal, who's in the back. He's doing an incredible work convening the broader community, and we will soon go public on where the school will officially start physically and where it will end. And so thank you so much. And then just a few previews looking forward to next month. Next month, we're going to talk about enrollment in Phoenix Union, the successes with our enrollment, some of the challenges. But one way in which we get at enrollment is we have student recruiters. And they're not just out in the community, they're also tracking data. And we set a vision for this position. It's a relatively new position. And said, wouldn't it be great if we had a position of our recent alumni who know our community, who get out into the community. We posted 3 positions, and these are the 3, and they're all alumni, alum from our district. And their job is to get out and meet students, get to middle schools. But one thing that we'll talk about next month is they're also calling almost every student that left Phoenix Union this year and said, why? What could we have done better? What should we have done better? What supports, what programs? And so more on enrollment, the good and the bad, coming next month. Also next month, this governing board will get a report on our 2023 bond planning, and this board will get a presentation on what the polls say. There was a little poll done, and what's the public say about Phoenix Union and the possibility of a bond. And then later this year, in April or May, we'll ask the board to officially call for that election, and the election will be in November. But next month, you'll get your first real flavor. And then also next month will be the time when we start to highlight the class of 23. And you'll get a chance to meet and talk and learn about some of our students. And as I shared earlier, we will highlight students that want to start their own company and go to the military, go local. But it's also will be our chance to talk about incredible students like Sarah Ramos Gonzalez, who grew up on the west side, went through the Isaac School District, and is now on her way to Yale with a full ride scholarship. So more on the class of 23 next month. And with that, I will turn it back to President for any questions, and then we can move on.
Board members, do we have any questions for Dr. G's report? Okay. The next item is 7A, presentations and discussion of the aggregated expenditure limit and the implications for Phoenix Union. Dr. G.
President Ross and members of the board and community, tonight I am going to ask Ms. Sherry Salaya, and if needed, the support of Executive Director for Finance, Gloria Butler, to talk about the aggregate expenditure limit. Tonight you're going to hear three things. You're going to hear what is an aggregate expenditure limit and the dilemma around that. You're going to hear what are the implications for this year if the legislature can't figure it out, Senator. And then also, if the legislature can't figure it out, it might impact next year. So what could that even look like next year? I want to thank, I think it was Board Member Napa and others who said we should talk about this publicly. Before I turn over to Ms. Salaya, I just want to say one thing really clearly. It's a lot of money. And the goal tonight is to just be honest about the possibilities. It's not to create panic. There should be urgency, but it's not to create panic. It's to show you an idea of what it could look like. There's no formal plan. Of course, we have to do planning behind the scenes to be ready. But when you see things like furlough and you see things like pausing clubs and sports, the idea isn't to say we're doing that, we want to do that. We're just talking about what are the possibilities and what would it look like if a system like PXU had to instantly cut out $55 million or start next year minus $55 million. So with that, I will turn over to our incredible Chief Financial Officer, Sherry Salaya.
Thank you, Dr. Geston. Good evening, President Ross, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Geston, leadership, and community. I am sure by now that you've all heard the chatter out there about the state's aggregate expenditure limit. Tonight, I will provide a brief description and history of AEL, the potential impact to PXU both for the current year and the following year, and examples of possible next steps related to budget reductions if our legislature does not override it. Please keep in mind that no final reductions have been determined, and if required, we would form a committee that includes appropriate representation to grapple with these recommendations. The aggregate expenditure limit was voter authorized in 1980. It is a formula that was designed to cap annual spending for the state budget, much like the federal government has a spending cap. School districts now represent almost 50% of the state's budget, and AEL does not apply to charter schools. The limit was put in place before charters existed in Arizona. Last year, the revenue from Prop 301, that's the Classroom Site Fund, was included and is now part of the AEL. Prior to this, it was exempt from it. Given this change, we anticipate that AEL will be an issue on an annual basis unless it's taken back to our voters for appropriate adjustments to the formula. Our legislature has until March 1st of this year to take action to override the AEL. If they do not take action by this date, public school districts statewide will be required to reduce their current year budgets immediately by April 1st, almost 18%. Remember, this will not impact charter schools. Our legislature does have the ability to override the limit with a 2/3 vote and has always approved the override in the past. So what is the specific impact to PXU if AEL is not lifted? It will require immediate budget reductions totaling almost $55 million. The entire $55 million budget reduction must happen immediately, even though districts are 75% of the way through the current school year. PXU's current operating budget is $340 million with reserves at 5%. That's approximately $20 million. This slide depicts the breakout of how funds are used in the maintenance and operations budget, just to give you some perspective as we explore examples of possible reductions. Please keep in mind that no decisions have been made related to any reductions, and if required, a committee would be formed with appropriate representation to work through proposed reductions and make recommendations to you, the board. As you can see, the majority of the operating budget is in salaries and benefits at 80%, with 16% in supplies and services and 4% in utilities. Some examples of supplies and services are toilet paper, cleaning supplies. In the classroom would be art supplies, science supplies, such as frogs, even food for our culinary students. Examples of services would be AIA fees, Delta T aids, for student transportation services, and even Bolt security. Given this, any budget reductions of this magnitude will impact staff through salaries and benefits. For the current fiscal year, the options for reductions would be more challenging and restricted, given that we would be 75% of the way through expenditures in the fiscal year. Some examples of what this could include are freezing current staff vacancies, possible furloughs of staff, use of maintenance and operations reserves, freezing M&O travel, eliminating summer work, freezing overtime, and even moving expenditures into ESSER 3. Just to remind board members, ESSER funds are those one-time funds given to us by the federal government for COVID relief. You may also have heard about maintenance of effort concerns, but any maintenance of effort requirements are at the state level and are not at the individual school district level. Just a reminder that maintenance of effort requires entities to maintain the same level of spending in the current programs when receiving federal dollars. This slide is a listing of the same areas demonstrating possible ranges of dollar reductions in each area. This list is not comprehensive. Other budget areas can be included. These are presented as examples only and not identified as actual budget reductions. Next, this listing identifies full reduction of maintenance and operation travel. And this is for the 23-24 year, if we had to continue on this path. This would not have an impact from federal programs. We also have identified the possibility of reductions of additional pay for employee groups. Some examples of this are coaching contracts, stipends for drama, dance, chorus for certified staff. These types of reductions, unfortunately, would have a direct impact on our students. Examples for classified staff would be opportunities for staff development and even overtime in current positions when needed. For administration, it could impact pay for Saturday school and additional administrative coverage expenses. We've also identified possible reductions across the board to campus supplies and services that could be as high as 20%. Part of this includes reduction of division budgets, including staffing at 20%. And just keep in mind that any staffing in this area would be in addition to staffing that we might have to reduce in other areas. We have identified, finally, that even with all these proposed reductions, we would have to reduce positions. This would encompass all employee groups and could mean that between 140 and 280 FTE would need to be eliminated. An FTE is a full-time equivalent staff member. It's actually a person. These reductions would be in addition, as I stated earlier, to any reductions of staff that divisions would have to make, if we made those division cuts of 20%. These examples have been provided to demonstrate just how challenging the budget reductions of this magnitude would be, and so that you can begin to see how the potential impact of this could hurt students and staff across the state in all districts. Are there any questions? I'm missing a page.
Yes, President Ross, Dr. G. So I already started a campaign at the state legislature before I was ever even elected, and I'm sure others have, and I'm looking at you, Senator. But anyway, besides, campaigning, as board members and getting community groups involved, how else can we as board members support, getting this situation turned around? Can you give us anything that you need us to get involved in other than those two things?
Yep, President Ross and Board Member Oliver, I think a couple of things. One, and you all know this already, but I'll just say this for the public. So it's a very political issue downtown. Sherry alluded to it in the past. Legislature override. There was an override every time. I think a few things that you could look at in the past, that there have been legislators that have been willing to pass it, legislators who haven't. And so some of it could just be very targeted. How do you reach out, schedule meetings, a letter to individual legislators that have voted against this in the past? Because statistically, there's about half that down at the Capitol that have said they would vote yes. And so it's not a whole, it's not all 90. It's a select number, and so that's one. I do think talking about it publicly without trying to create a panic, and that's why we're very clear, right? That these are scary, furloughs and cuts, and that's scary. Cutting dance, and you can imagine what this boardroom would look like if we made all those cuts. And so I do think telling the story of Phoenix Union, this $55 million changes lives. And then I think the third thing that a story that needs to be told is one of the biggest impacts that this would have actually isn't necessarily here. It's in rural Arizona. School districts in many cities and towns are the primary employer. If schools shut down and school systems across the state furlough, their employees, who are the main economy, are not getting paid. And just like COVID, there's no school, you can't drop your kid off at school, so you can't go to work. And so the economic impact of this is absolutely catastrophic. It's personally catastrophic for Phoenix Union, our employees, our kids. It's personally and economically catastrophic in certain communities. So I think telling the story, I know Board Member Napa has talked about the impact of some of our indigenous brothers and sisters up north. And in many of those communities, the school district, again, is also. And so it'll also be very disproportionately impactful. And to be able to tell that story as well, I think is critically important.
Members, any other questions?
President Ross. I know last year, this is a recurring issue. I think we passed a resolution as a board calling on the legislature and the governor to take action on the aggregate expenditure limit. And I know the political dynamics are a little different at the legislature, so kind of an open conversation for the board. Is it helpful if we did something like that again? Is it helpful? I think in other cases, Dr. Gessen, you've led letters co-signed by other superintendents. Is it better to try to get you and superintendents across the state, specifically in rural communities, since those are the members that sound like they need to be convinced? But really, I don't know if Senator Olson has guidance here as well.
So I'll respond in a couple of different ways. So one, I think you could talk about a resolution. I'm not sure the resolutions that have been passed across the state have not, at this point, been helpful. But this board, if it's the will of the board, certainly. Two, that we actually, a group of superintendents, actually got together, drafted a letter, and actually did send a superintendent's letter. And I believe all but 3 superintendents in our state sent a letter, and it didn't impact the decision at all. And so I think, and maybe the senator can give her perspective, but right now, it's a fight. And people that want to say no are saying no, and people that want to say yes are saying yes. But Senator, maybe you can give us some hope over there.
Excuse me. Well, I think it will be taken care of. It's interesting that we have several members, and our membership in both the House and the Senate has become increasingly to the right, and it is those individuals who don't want to support schools and want to cause chaos in almost every arena in our state. I do believe, however, that Lynn's coming up to shut me down. Oh, okay. But I think that the membership, at least the leadership, has come to understand that this would be an impossibility to happen statewide, and that I think they'll get the votes, because just think about it. I had a member of the lobbyist community in my office just this afternoon, and I said, I can't spend too much time with you. I got to go to my board meeting. And we were talking about the AEL, and he said, I have 3 little girls. I had to be their teacher during COVID. He said, and I learned a big lesson. I am not a teacher, and I have more respect than I have ever had in my life for what teachers and the school systems do for our community. So I think we've got, people who have been through the COVID experience with their kids and schools not being open on our side right now. But even the new superintendent of public instruction, who happens to be a very conservative Republican, has made the comment that we can't do this. It's not just going to be the liberal parents who want to keep the schools open. It will be the entire community who feels the pressure and the necessity to keeping schools open. So it may take some arm twisting on the part of the Republican leadership. I think the Democrats are probably, I don't know of one that is not already on board. So I'm not in a panic about it, but what I would like to have happen is to find a statewide solution to this, so we're not coming to the brink and scaring our families, our staff. I mean, it's a scary thing if you think of what could happen. I don't think it's going to, but it could happen. And that takes a constitutional vote of the people, and there's only 2 ways to get at that. One is a referral by the legislature, and the other is an initiative process. That means we have to go out on the streets and gather a lot of signatures, and it's more for a constitutional change than it is for a legal, just to do a law. So it's a big deal. It's very expensive in man hours and people involvement. So it's not an easy thing to do. I would hope that the legislature would pass the referral. I don't think they will. I don't think they can with their membership. So, but I could be wrong, and I am always a hopeful person, and so I think we're going to be okay. But if you have any friends in the legislature that you have a personal relationship with, I would say give them a call and tell them, you know, we just can't do this to our families and our communities, because if it were to happen, it would be disastrous. So, thank you.
Thank you. Member Napa?
Thank you, President Ross. Senator Alston, do we know which Republicans are leaning towards voting yes?
No, can you restate your question? You want to know which ones are with us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know that Mr. Cook on the House side has sponsored the bill to pass it, and it got out of committee. I misread a news article and thought it had got out of the House, but it's not out of the House. It's out of committee. I know that Mr. Bennett, Senator Bennett, on the Senate side is a Republican who has, as recently as this afternoon, been going around reassuring Democrats that we're going to get it out and we're not going to wait till March 1st. So I hope he's right. But I don't know specifically. I do know that more people have been elected to make both the House and the Senate more to the right than were in the last legislature. And they had to do some arm twisting then. So it will be. But I do know those two are leaders in the Republican side in both the House and the Senate.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions about AEL?
And President, I'll just make maybe a couple quick final comments before we wrap this up. One, thank you, President, and as you heard from thank you, Senator. As you heard from Senator, it's a very partisan issue right now, but the impact is nonpartisan, right? The impact is bipartisan, nonpartisan. It'll hit everywhere, and so if you're wondering why this DR talk, it's a very partisan issue today. The conversation, the impact is everybody. But the other thing that I would say that we're also bracing for, and we're hopeful, we're optimistic, which is why we're saying don't panic. We've also talked through a scenario, not just internally, but with superintendents, that you don't get to the finish line. I would guess that if for some reason you don't get to that finish line, it would take a day or two or three in Arizona before you were back voting on it again. And so we are also bracing for what's a 1 to 5 day plan look like. Because it's possible, partisan politics get in the way, possible. But I would guess when the nearly 8 million Arizonans and the 1.1 million school children and all the parents are marching all across the streets in the state on both sides of the aisle, it'll get solved really quickly thereafter. So I would say let's remain optimistic and just know we're preparing for what would it look like for 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 days to let this place fall apart, this place being this entire state, and then come back to the drawing board.
President Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Gesson, I heard that our past resolutions and even letters, from other superintendents across the state that hasn't moved the needle this year or in years past. If there's appetite from the board, as long as there's not an opinion that says like doing a resolution or a letter is harmful, but if it's just not effective, I don't think we can take action tonight, but I guess I'm just saying in the future, or potentially sometimes we've coordinated this between board meetings to come up with some language that could potentially be presented. I guess my opinion is that the audience would not necessarily be the legislators, but passing a resolution to show our values and our community and parents and teachers and staff so that they activate to call their legislators and let them know how important this is.
President Ross and board, if any of you want to lean in and just give an initial thought, because I think if it's the will of the board, of course, we could draft it, bring it back, however you would vote, but it also could contain language more about solving it long-term, right? Because I know our resolution primarily was, let's solve this one now at least, And I think maybe if we bring back a resolution, it's very clearly about not just the short term, but the long term.
Any other? Yes.
That would be my suggestion is this can't keep happening over and over again, and we would need to have language in there that just says, you know, this is a troubling thing for every school in Arizona, and this needs to be solved today. And I think I know our governor holds this as one of her key initiatives. So. And I'm willing to go have conversations with her as well. So I think that's the direction I would like to pursue if the other board members would be on board with that as well.
President Ross, thank you so much. I think
We cannot take action.
No, yeah, you
tonight.
can take action, and no, you're good. And she wasn't asking that. You can state your opinion tonight. We're not reaching consensus tonight. That's what Lynn's going to say. So we're not going to. So if you all want to show your support, you can show your support. But we're not, for the record, we're not counting votes. We're not voting. We're not doing a resolution tonight.
Awesome. The next item is 8B, discussion of the school safety, health, and wellness, including the Phoenix Union Next Gen Safety and Security Plan with potential action. Dr. G.
All right, President Ross, members of the board. Believe it or not, after this presentation, we have just a couple short action items and we're done tonight. So this could be, well, depending on how long this item goes. It's our last presentation for the night. Thank you, Claudio Coria, for coming and giving his monthly report. Of course, Thea Andrade is here to answer questions as well. Alyssa Tarkington, myself, Isela next as well. So I'll turn over to Claudio. He's going to provide his typical update, and then I am going to provide an update on Component 7 at the request of Governing Board when he's done.
Thank you, Dr. Yeston. Good evening, President Ross, members of the board, and broader PXU community. Buenas tardes a todos. And who has the clicker? SB does. Excellent. Oh, okay. I think SB's. Okay. So there. Governing Board, as we do every month, we bring to you updates on our law enforcement expenditures and usage. For the month of January, we had available for our campus support 85 officers during the day, and then 25 officers for evening support. Mainly, as we heard earlier, it's for the month of January, it's mainly basketball, but there are other events, totaling a total amount of $54,632. And then, do I have the? There we go. And then, in addition, Governing Board, we bring to you the updates around the work and priorities and focus areas of the Student Safety Committee. And so, one of the things that the Student Safety Committee focused on last week at last week's meeting was studying the ASU report that was authored in September 2021. And then in the next meeting, coming up next week, the focus will be on participatory budgeting information. In addition, next week, the committee will focus around sample intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs, that are samples from across the nation that have been in place with school districts and local law enforcement. So our committee will be able to examine and study those. In addition, we also bring you an update on the community engagement component. This is a critical piece of the work of the committee. And so we continue to expand and push the safety survey that's accessible to all stakeholders for their convenience. In addition, we've shared this before, that we have community engagement listening sessions that have already taken place. We had one in December, another one in January at Betty Fairfax, and then we have 2 more scheduled, one at Carl Hayden and the last one back at Central. This slide here depicts some of the work that's been done to get the message out about the priorities and the work of the Student Safety Committee, the listening sessions. To the far left, we can see that we have done a good job of getting the message out around the work of the Student Safety Committee, inviting people, informing them of the listening sessions. The far left there, 2.4 million people have seen these messages. And then on the far right, this has been free media or earned media, as they call it. And if Phoenix Union would to have paid for this, almost $3.3 million that we didn't have to pay, we got the message out. However, despite these efforts, honestly, we've been disappointed in the participation rates at those listening sessions. And so working closely with the consultants, Iconico and Javelina, we've strategized to make some changes. And so instead of having sessions and inviting people to those sessions, that hasn't been as productive. So we've switched gears. And so in partnership with our vendors, the shifts have been to go to. The changes has been to go to where the students, the families, the staff, and our community is, and so that's been the major change. Specifically, go to campuses. That's where our students, staff, and families are. So specifically, strategies around cafecito with the principal over there, Carl Hayden. PTO meetings that already exist, really engaging our families in that space. They're already there. Let's engage them around safety and law enforcement use. The other piece is students. That's been a gap in some of the work with our listening sessions. So go to where students are, right, where it's convenient and accessible to them, lunchtime, advisories, so they're not missing out on other things, but they have access to provide feedback to our consultants. In addition, go to staff meetings. Already our campuses have established staff meetings. Let's meet with them. Connect, work well with our associations, affinity groups, et cetera. Those meetings have already been scheduled, some have taken place, some are scheduled, and we will continue to have these scheduled groups that are already taking place. In addition, the convenience of home, so phone banking, connecting with our families and our staff. And so when our consultants call, two things. One is to obviously conduct some of the survey, get the information around safety, around law enforcement, but also invite them, personal invitations to the next listening sessions. And in addition, continue to expand the opportunities for surveys and then the in-person listening sessions. Again, the more variety that is provided, the better. And with that, I turn it over to Dr. Geston.
Excellent. Governing Board, maybe we'll stop for a second. Are there student safety committee questions? Again, I'm going to talk about the regional officer model and what that looks like and how that's connected. But if there's any specific questions, I want to thank Claudio. Board Member Ross and I were talking that the turnout hasn't been good. We're certainly not blaming our community, right? That wasn't the message, but trying to now meet our community where they are. Right? Instead of saying the only way you can give feedback is to drive on this Saturday at this time to this school, that doesn't work. It works for some, but not enough. And so as you can tell, the major pivot is let's go to where our people are. We already know that there are meetings that exist. We know where people are gathering. Let's go meet our people where they are. And so thank you for working with our vendor to make sure that we get to the community, because here's the reality. Our community wants to be heard. Right? They want to talk. They want to engage. We just need to make sure we're creating the right time and space for that to happen. So then, yeah, please. Yeah, any questions for?
Yeah, I guess my question is not for Claudio, and feel free to decline, but I was going to ask our two board members, I don't know if Jenny can hear, that are also part of the school safety committee, if you have any insights or if you think there's something that has been discussed at these school safety committee meetings that are there out-of-the-box ideas that can get more community engagement that maybe isn't there, it's not a consensus of the group, or there's certain ideas that are being pushed within the school safety committee. But yeah, feel free to not respond. I know I put both of you on the spot.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, she's on there. She's talking.
Ms. Hernandez, we can hear you. If you don't mind speaking up a little bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I put my hand up, but I'm not sure if you could see it. But thank you, President Ross and Board Member Marquez. I do actually have some clarity questions. So thank you so much, Claudio, for giving us that update. It was really good to see that be broken down. I do have just a couple of concerns, and I'm glad you also did, answer a lot of the concerns I actually had.
You know, one of the things that I am seeing now is the fact that we are going to start bringing in a little bit more of effective recruitment tactics, right? Because it was very clear, as we just saw, that passive engagement does not work on its own, right? Like the emails, text, digital ads, although it can reach out to so many people, that it is still very limited to people who actually need to come out and speak and have their voice heard. And so it's really exciting to see that we're going to start including phone calls, that we're going to start including direct conversations. And I did actually want to add a little bit more of those tactics. As someone who was, on the safety committee and, you know, part of a lot of these discussions and these brainstorming sessions, it was very clear that we knew in order to have effective turnout that we needed to do proactive work, right? And so I would really want to suggest tabling, having tabling opportunities, having, you know, other community organizations come in and, you know, maybe supporting with, you know, turning out that survey or trying to recruit students. Because we know students, teachers, everyone is so limited with their time. Whereas, you know, if we bring in an outside crew who has a little bit more time, who brings in more volunteers and is able to get to a lot more students to sign up, that would be very effective. That on its own would not work, right? Because we still need to follow up with the people who sign up. We still need to confirm them and we still need to remind them, right? And having those three different follow-ups actually makes it more likely for teachers, staff, parents, or families to come out to the actual sessions. I know there was a huge setback with students not being allowed to get out of class to participate. So I know that can be a barrier sometimes. So I'm really love to see that we would be able to now participate in advisory, or even if teachers are willing. I know teachers are right now do a little bit of civic engagement, are willing to, you know, give a few extra points to a student who, you know, is in need of those extra few points. That would be really awesome to see. But yeah, tabling, students can do this as well. That I see this as a leadership opportunity for students to get out of that comfort zone and be able to go and table and collect surveys, or even when students are able to attend, that is, can you send this, asking that last question is, who can you invite to this next session, or who can you send the survey to, or can you send the survey to five of your friends or 5 other teachers? And so I did just want to include some of those tactics. But now on to my questions. Sorry about that. So we had identified 4 different groups to reach out to in the safety committee. We decided to reach out to admin, security, team certified employees, to families, students, and teachers. At the moment, do we know where we are getting most participation from?
President Ross, Board Member Hernandez, yes, we do. The most participation at this point is our staff, and then we're struggling with our student component.
Okay, and I do have another question. These new tactics, are they going to be implemented in the next sessions, or have they already been implemented? If they have, are our participation numbers going up or survey numbers going up at all?
President Ross, Member Hernandez, we actually started this week. The vendors started this week with phone calling, connecting with principals around setting up these meetings to meet with students, to meet with staff. So they've started, and again, we're looking forward to that participation increasing.
And President Ross and Board Member Hernandez, we anticipate next month, although the committee will hear the results, but we do anticipate next month having you guys hear the results at the board meeting. So we'll be able to look at the change in participation rate, see how that turned out, but also the actual results. So we plan over the next 2 months to have either vendors, members of the committee, the president come and give updates, because we're getting close to that finish line.
Any other questions from members?
I had brought up back in the fall, so Betty Fairfax's listening sessions were on Tuesdays, but students were not allowed to get out of classes to participate, and we're going to revisit potentially thinking about or adding other dates for our students in the South region. Do we know our numbers from Betty Fairfax, and are we going to be implementing another listening session for those students who are not able to participate due to having to be in class?
President Ross and Clerk Napa. So yes, we do have our numbers from Betty Fairfax. They were 16 participants for those listening sessions. And yes, the Iconico Javelina, we strategized around ways that we can specifically focus in on increasing the number of student participants. And again, going back to the presentation around visiting students during advisory, visiting students during lunchtime, providing that access when the students are available, making it convenient for them.
And President Ross and Clerk Napa, I do know that as Claudio was working with Iconico and said, hey, are there specific schools? And I know that they have actually reached out, made contact with South Fairfax and Chavez, because that was the South. So they do have plans already to get into those schools specifically.
Yeah, just lifting up, making sure that we are equitable in our outreach and getting those voices. I've heard discussions and we've seen evidence that our history in PXU is the focus on our central area, downtown. Look how many schools I have in my ward. I have 8, right? And we hardly have any, they're really big schools in our South region. And I really want to make sure that we are hearing those voices from our students, our communities, our teachers, our faculty, staff in our South region. Another question, and this will probably, being on the safety committee, I would like to hear this clearer in our next safety meeting, a list of all of the mandatory reporting offenses that PXU is required to call police officers for, PD. I want a list of everything that we would have to just not mandatory report, but what the actual offenses are. Outside of just weapons, outside of just drugs, like what are those offenses and what are the laws, regulations? Yeah.
President Ross and Clerk Napa, we will provide that. In fact, one of the things that we have on there that we provided to the Student Safety Committee is a student code of conduct that does already have identified areas, incidents, behaviors that do require law enforcement. So I think we can start with that. And that has been provided to the Student Safety Committee. Thank you.
Member Marquez, you had a question?
Yeah, I think kind of a follow-up on Board Member Hernandez's comments about tabling on campus, potentially inviting in some outside community-based organizations into this process. And I know when we started this school safety committee, we said let's put some investment behind community outreach, and I think Iconico and Javelina do great work, and clearly they've made a good effort. I think one of the ideas I suggested in August was, is it feasible to do anything that's like a micro grant? And even if that's not feasible, are there, and maybe Claudia, you could take this back to the school safety committee, could the school safety committee come up with a list of vetted community-based organizations that whether we can give them a micro grant or not, we just invite them to participate in the process and say, hey, hold your own community meeting, we'll give you the tools and resources to collect the data. Or if you guys want to come table, come and set up a table and we'll let you do it. We'll set up an MOU or something that allows you to on campus to do it. But I'd love to see Poder have that opportunity, and I don't know if all in education would want to do something like that to get feedback from parents. But I think it would be really powerful to bring more community-based organizations into this process.
I saw that Claudio made note of that, and he can present to the committee. I do want to follow up on just one comment that you made. Part of the board action back in August was that we would be willing to put forward resources to make sure we get out to the community. And just want to follow up on one item that we did partner with a local marketing firm, Colibri, and some of you may have heard of them in the community. And they've actually run 4 campaigns for us so far. Again, we're working on the effectiveness of that. They have some more planned, but have spent money on an extra campaign to make sure that we're trying to get out to our community.
Members, any other comments? Awesome. The next item is.
I'm going to do, yeah, I got my one last part on the
I'm just
regional
ready to
officer.
go.
That's okay.
I was ready to
President
go.
Ross is ready to be done. That, I don't blame you. I think we're all ready to be done too. So President Ross and board, I was also, it was recommended at the board retreat that we had that, that I talked publicly about the regional model that's been recommended, partially because the safety committee is looking at 3 models. Doesn't mean they can't come up with a different model, but they're looking at 3 models. And we know those models well. We've been doing the off-duty model. We know what that looks like and that feels like. There's another kind of safety bureau model that we've talked about in the past. We've had SROs in the past, but we've never had a regional model. And to kind of explain why that's the current executive team's recommendation, not to step on the toes of the committee, but their job is to look at our recommendation. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about what is that regional model look like, what's the big picture design that we've been really talking about and pushing here in PXU. So a very, very quick level set, a reminder when it comes to law enforcement that falls in component 7 of the Next Gen Safety Security Plan. It actually is considered component 7, says law enforcement usage. It doesn't say SROs, it just says usage. What's the partnership that school district like Phoenix Union needs to have to handle, back to Clerk Napa's question, there are mandatory reporting requirements. On top of that, there are mandatory law enforcement notifications. And on top of that, there are other complex issues like social media threats and confiscations and other things that law enforcement assist with. So component 7 calls for a law enforcement model. The regional model that we have talked about in the past, when we came to the board in August, option 2 was this regional model. Phoenix Union has divided itself, although we're one system, we've divided ourselves into 3 support regions. We have a south region, a west region, and a north, central, east, kind of this area region. And we do that to provide better local support to our schools. And we already have a bunch of regional positions. We have regional social workers, regional psychologists, regional safety supervisors. We will very soon have regional parent coordinators. And so we're building this regional model where we can go out and support schools. And so we believe that this regional officer model fits very nicely into that. At the time when we came to you in August to the governing board, we thought 1 in each region would be sufficient. As we've shared with the board, Claudio shared with the committee, based on all that's happening in the community, 3 seems like a small number. We believe 2 per region would be the right fit for us. Again, just hearing our recommendation. We do spend 220 square miles, have over 20 properties, have 32,000 souls on our campuses every single day. And so to keep up with that, the regional model, we have said that 6 would ideally be the right number. And that we also want to talk about why we think this might work. So one of the options would be not have a regional model and just do 911 when we need that. You saw today Claudio Correa's presentation. I'll go back. We had 85. They weren't individual, which I can share in a moment. Trying to go back to his slide. One more. There we go. All right. So you see that number 85 and 25. Those, of course, some of those are duplicate numbers. So we're having, depending on the month, 15, 20, 30 different officers through our campuses. That's not consistent. And those are ones that we're paying for that day. That's not just 911. So they're not consistent. They don't share our values. They don't go to our trainings. They're not held to an IGA to says this is what you do and what you don't do. And so that's the off-duty model. Not having any model whatsoever, relying upon 911 goes back to the level of service, the timeliness of service, and navigating issues and threats that the public may not know about. Eventually, public knows about, but we sometimes have to navigate really tough threats that we need to get ahead of. And the 911 model doesn't allow us to do that, which is why we continue to say a partnership with the city, as controversial as that might be to some people, we will continue to stand behind the importance of that. We also, as we talk about regional, people say, well, then if you're going to do regional, why not do school resource officers again? And so we hear, and you hear that in the committee, Ms. Napa's on there. It's like, we either want none or we want all. And part of the reason why you don't hear Phoenix Union's executive team saying school resource officers is the right model for us is a few things. One, In 2017, we laid out a next-gen safety security plan. And in that plan, we were really clear that if we can strengthen safety systems, it will decrease the need for law enforcement. It can't eliminate it. Some people would believe that's the case, but it can eliminate it, but that we can decrease the need because there are very slight, small things that law enforcement has to deal with, but not all things. And what happens and so for us, the idea of next-gen safety security was to improve other systems to decrease reliance upon local law enforcement and keep law enforcement to the lane that they need to fill, but not outside of that lane. Because what we've seen across the country just happened in Tennessee, if you didn't see, a young man didn't want to play kickball in PE. And guess what the school did? They asked the SRO to go intervene. And it ended up in a horrific arrest. And so that's when school systems don't know how and what lane law enforcement plays in schools. And so we never had that model. We'll never have that model. But we do believe as we strengthen next-gen safety security and narrow the focus of law enforcement, there's less need. We also know, candidly, that even if tonight the governing board said, you know what, we're going to do SROs at every school, and you pass a motion tonight, there aren't enough officers available. So there's also a supply chain issue. The city couldn't even supply enough officers to be at every school right now. They're down 700 officers, and that's really clear. What we also know about the SRO model is that there are a lot of components in there that we're doing now already that law enforcement doesn't necessarily have to do. That in the old model, if we had an attendance issue, we told the officer to do it, to deal with the attendance issue. Well, we have people that do that now, and they shouldn't get involved in that. Even things like law-related education, making sure students know how to stay out of trouble and how to navigate the system, that doesn't have to be done by an officer. We can do that. We have done that. But there's also virtual ways to do that now as well. And so a lot of what was inside of the IGA and the school model just isn't relevant anymore because we already do those things. But as we've been very clear, there is components of school safety that require require support from law enforcement. So Phoenix Union has said that a regional model we believe fits well. And it fits well for a couple of reasons. One, we have the regional in this particular recommendation that the committee's grappling with is two per region. Again, in this model, the focus is narrow. It is mandatory law enforcement notifications, it's mandatory reporting issues, it's emergencies, it's threats, it's emergency plan, it's just the stuff that requires. And based on the data and statistics, not opinion, based on how many issues we have, how often we call, that the volume of law enforcement related issues requires somewhere between, around 6 officers for us to, okay, great. We'll make sure you can see it, Ms. Hernandez. Hopefully you can hear. And again, it's mainly just my voice and just the background here. So to only go. If we move toward a regional model, inside this regional model, it is an IGA with the city. But in the IGA with the city, that actually outlines what you do and what you don't do. In the absence of one, there's no rules around what you do and what you don't do when you show up to Phoenix Union. And in an IGA, like in the past, what was great about having an IGA, however people felt about that, was built into the IGA is not just how you show up and what you show up like, but actually if we have a training, you come to our training. And so if restorative practices are important to Phoenix Union, then these regional officers come to restorative practices with us. When we talk about de-escalation and trauma-informed, so built into that, when we're learning, when we're sharing values, in this model, the officers sit side by side and go through all the head, heart, hands that we're talking about is a part of the training for in this regional model. We also believe part of why a regional model, even versus a school-based model, could be really effective is in the school-based model, an officer had one focus, that school, Chavez High School. But there's a broader community. Most of our issues are community. They're not school issues. And in a regional model, officers are responsible for understanding community, not just our school. And so tracking what's happening in the community. What are the challenges with trafficking? What are the challenges with drugs? What are the challenges with the rise of access to firearms? And so regional officers that look at community from a broad perspective versus a school, we believe actually might provide more value than this narrow focus of one particular school. Also, we believe that in the regional model, that if we had officers, one of the main differences today, we don't have any officers or any law enforcement anyway whose job it is to eat, sleep, and breathe the safety of our staff and students. When we had SROs, as controversial as that was, at least we had officers that was their only job, was Phoenix Union. Right now, in the law enforcement model that we have, off-duty officers, we're not their priority. We're just their off day. And they just come and fill out forms and take this issue. But in the regional model, we go back to officers that eat, sleep, and breathe Phoenix Union safety, understand the challenges that exist inside our communities, can build relationships with admin and our safety teams to say, hey, we need to make sure we take care of this issue. And day-to-day small things that in the absence of district-assigned officers, whether that's school or regional, as I alluded to, a lot of the challenges, it's not that our kids are dangerous, our communities can get tough. And in the past, when we had officers whose only job it was to track safety in Phoenix Union, when there was an issue or an individual outside of the school that was making their way to the school, then we would have officers because they had access to radios, to be able to call the principal and say, hey, I need you to lock your gates on the east side. In about 3 minutes, we're going to tackle an issue outside in your community. And we would be able to keep campuses safe while police activity took place after. We don't have access to that information anymore. And so if there's a community issue that's coming to our school, we don't know it until they're at our gates. And in the absence of this model, we don't have access to that information. And then finally, in terms of why we think this is a benefit, again, whether people agree or not, is that one of the questions is, where would they be housed? So if you have 3 officers, 6 officers, and they're regional, they're not school-based, this model might work. Part of our proposal has been, we have Franklin Police and Fire High School. We have a police school. Every day there are officers and sheriffs and retirees coming in and out of that school, and home base could very easily be police, where current officers and future officers talk about the future of policing and start to challenge ourselves on what that should look like in 5 years and in 10 years, and to think about the institution of police and policing in partnership with officers that share our values and kids that want to someday serve in that role, that we also think that the partnership at Franklin Police could be a benefit. So I just wanted to share again at the request of the board, why is it that we believe regional is the right model? What are the components? What would that look like and feel like? And just wanted to, at the board's request, just give an overview. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know the committee's grappling with this model as well. Not asking board to take any action on this tonight, but I'm happy to answer questions and know that the committee's grappling with this model as well.
Members, do you have any? Yes. Member Oliver.
It may be more of a commentary than a question, but because I think you did, I thank you, Board Member Napa, for asking for this, because it did give us more insight into what's going on, because I know we have police officers that are specially trained for mental health situations and in that space. So training of the regional officers would be of utmost importance to me as a board member, because I represent schools in the South region, and that is the presence could be a problem in the communities I serve. One of the questions I will pose is, have we thought through things like, do they wear uniforms or don't they wear uniforms? Because that is very triggering in my community. And I want students to learn and not be triggered. So can you answer that for me, Dr. G?
Yeah, President Ross and Board Member Oliver, so obviously can't speak for the city, but I can tell you that whereas in the past there was no openness to SROs wearing a different uniform, I do know that the city's been open to that. I know that even in one of our sister districts, they've actually worn a different uniform. And so I do think that's something that we've asked for in the past. I do know that uniform has an impact. So I do believe the city is open to that, but again, I can't speak for them.
And I have a follow-up. So because I'm thinking about the community I serve, accountability for these regional officers early on before it gets to be a problem. Have we thought through those kinds of measures, or is that something we would want to think through?
Yeah, President Ross, members of the board, and Board Member Oliver. So we've thought about it, but of course we don't want to get ahead of the committee. So we're trying not to. We want to be honest with you all, but we also don't want to create any perception that we're overly influencing. I mean, we've been honest. We believe an IGA with the city, as controversial as that is, we need officers. There's no, but we're trying not to get ahead of that. What I can tell you is that IGAs, though, our previous one and other ones across the country really define that. And it's built into it, and it's really clear of what the expectations, the boundaries, the accountability are in the system.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members?
Madam
Comments?
Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick one. I think as my question, Dr. Geston, as the committee is grappling with this, are they going back to the leveraging the research from Grand Canyon Institute? Because I think part of what we were told through that research was that this can be a model that works if you put the right guardrails and guidelines in place. It can be an effective kind of middle ground. And I am of the opinion it shouldn't be 0 or 100. What is what meets the need, and not have either extreme approach, but really a balanced approach to a real problem and a real issue that we need to solve for. So I just wanted to know what guidance are they taking from that, and yeah.
For sure. President Ross, board, and board member Para. Yeah, so they do every meeting. If you come to the meeting, they actually have the posters of the guiding, the findings from the Grand Canyon Institute report. Clerk Napa can talk about how often you refer back to those, but they're always up. They last month also looked at an ASU report, but you are right inside of that report. The idea was reduced contact, but not none, right? It was essentially there are things that require law enforcement. But the idea is to find the right number and the right fit, but also the right guardrails. And that's why right now in the absence, because right now the city of Phoenix is an approved vendor for us. There's no IGA. All we're doing is paying for an officer to come. And so there are no ground rules. And the truth is, that's the same for any approved vendor. We want ground rules, right? Anybody that comes onto our campus. And so in this model, we just don't have the right particular ground rules. And that's why this regional model with an IGA allows us to provide that, but pick the right number. I think the other thing that I didn't say as well, that it's a question I've been asked a lot of, in any of these models, how much does it cost us and what does it cost the city? Interestingly, in this off-duty model, we just pay 100% as they come. And it's all M&O right out of the money that could go somewhere else. In an IGA model, where we actually have officers that are assigned to us, the city, without question, pays between 25 to 30% of that officer right away. And there are grants to make them free. And so interestingly, a regional model could actually mean the city and grants pay for them and we pay nothing if we do this right. And so I've told the board in previous board meetings, we have our team writing for grants for officers, FOR officers, not FOUR officers, for officers. If in the event, that's where the committee goes and the board goes. If we get these grants for officers and don't go in that direction, then we can just return the money. But I can tell you that if we do this right, it's not even our money necessarily. It could be some, but not nearly what we're spending today. Hopefully that answered some or all of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gesson. And then just one comment on the uniform thing, because this has been something that I've brought up now for years. And I started bringing it up because I'm a former child victim advocate, and I worked across the county on child crime cases. And it's very clear when I would work in Scottsdale Unified, officers don't show up in uniforms in Scottsdale. And Phoenix was very different. We had uniform officers out here, and so there was a clear discrepancy across just our own county. And so I think I'm very glad to hear that the city is now open to dressing down officers that are on our campuses. I know that that's been a huge push and pull conversation, but it is absolutely critical, and it's very apparent how different it is across just county communities, and Scottsdale is not very far from here. So just something for the city also to be mindful of.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
One thing I want to say, oh, thank you, President Ross. One of the things I wanted to lift up to Board Member Para, the GCI document, we do have the key findings and recommendations, and we are supposed to be developing a proposal for the governing board as to what that law enforcement interaction is. You're right. The GCI report does say very limited action, but not none. The GCI report and was it Dr. Fernandez? Dr. Fernandez from GCI came and spoke to us at the first session. One of the things that resonated with me was what is perceived safety and what is actual safety. And so as a member of the safety committee, I want to say that I have received a list of the mandatory reporting, just like Mr. Carrillo said, back in September 22nd actually. But I do not remember or recall, I'm looking through my data, any data on the type of events that PD is called to our schools for and the number of events that PD is called for. So as a committee member, I do not really know what the actual safety is here at PXU. I think we have all of our own inherent and lived experiences around PD and our perceived idea of safety, but as a community member, I have no idea what the actual safety is on our campuses. The other thing I wanted to say too, because I did hear in the regional model, police officers responding to mental health, that is just terrible. Here in Phoenix, if you call 911 and you see somebody who is saying that they want to commit suicide, are going to take action and commit suicide, it's not a behavioral health professional that comes to intervene. It is a police officer, and a police officer will arrest them and take them down for their own safety so they don't hurt themselves, right? So engaging in police officers for the mental health of our community, especially our students, we shouldn't be doing that at all. That's all I have to say about that.
No problem. President Ross and Clerk Napa, let me respond on a couple of things. One, we're actually happy to share that data. To their first point, we have that data very clearly of how many mandatory report. Now, a couple of things. The mandatory law enforcement notifications, because there's two things that we're talking about when it comes to reporting. There's mandatory reporting like abuse and neglect. And then there's mandatory law enforcement notification, like a firearm or a sexual assault, so there's mandatory reporting, and then there's mandatory law enforcement notifications driven by statute. So there are two reasons and two types of reports we would get. We know to the number the times we called for a mandatory law enforcement notification. When it comes to mandatory reporting, abuse and neglect, for the protection of our students, we don't keep all that data. But we can give you hard data that we have, knowing that it's going to be more because of the cases that we don't. For the abuse neglect cases, we can't keep that in our computer system for the protection of our students. But I can just tell you off the top of my head that in a normal school year, before this mental health and behavioral crisis and rise of firearms and fentanyl, et cetera, but back in a normal school year, whatever that means, there were, on average, about 700 mandatory law enforcement notifications a year that required officers. 700. So you can do the math by school day on average, right? We're talking about somewhere between 3 to 5 incidents a day, just on that one particular. And then we have the data we could share with you. Well, how many of those ended up in an arrest? We have that data as well. It's a very small number. And then on top of that, what'll be tough not to see in the data is that these abuse and neglect cases, because we're all mandatory reporters. And then on top of that, what you won't see in the data is although we track it now, social media threats and other threats that we have to go through law enforcement. And, just candidly for public, like if there's a threat to a campus, it's not just law enforcement, sometimes there's Homeland Security and FBI, and there's a whole process that takes place behind the scenes. And so not all those are documented as well. But when you look at the totality of the data, between mandatory law enforcement notifications, abuse and neglect, and social media threats, it's going to be about 2,000 incidents a year. So when you take that number, you divide that by 180 days, and you start to do the math. That's why we say about 6 officers. When you think about just the paperwork and the meetings, it's about 2,000 incidents a year on a typical year that we would be required to or need, because of social media threat, access to that level of support. The second thing, and related to that, and none of this is our officers in the past or in this model, even currently doing any mental health stuff, which is why we've dramatically increased social emotional support. And for the public to hear, and then I'll be quiet, for the public to hear, at the board retreat, we shared a document with the governing board of how much money do we spend on social emotional support in Phoenix Union. Counselors, social workers, interventionists, safety personnel, just in people. 6 years ago, we were spending $17 million in support for wraparound. Today, we've doubled that. It's almost $35 million. We've almost tripled the number of social workers in our system. We've brought in our student success coordinators, dramatically increased. So we've gone from 17 million to 34 million, almost 35 million, and that does not include facilities and all the other upgrades. So we're already spending the wraparound so that we, again, never have to have any sort of formal official personnel go to handle issues that are not in their lane. But again, there is a lane where we need help in those particular areas.
Members, any other? Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, hello. Thank you, President Ross. Yeah, so this conversation definitely kind of just thinking about the regional model, non-regional model, and kind of seeing where that's going to go and what the safety committee will bring back to us is giving it a little bit of, just want to provide some food for thought, but this did trigger some questions that I have, especially thinking of the regional model, right? How that would expand out to community and how, these police officers would then also take care of the community, but that also means then how are they putting our community at risk as well, not just our students, because now we're thinking about like how many, especially and I'm gonna talk for my own ward in the Maryville area where we're very much have high crime rate because there's just a lot more, supposedly more criminal activity, but it's really just a lot of more criminalizing laws that criminalize us. Is I really want to get a full report on drug-free school zones for the March meeting, if possible. The report, I would really love for that to include some of these questions. Maybe Dr. G, you can answer some of these questions now, but it can also be in that report, right? So are any Phoenix Union schools now drug-free school zones? And if yes, can we get a list of what those schools are? Do we have, how much funding does Phoenix Union get for participating in drug-free zone, school zone programs? And what is that funding being used for now? And if possible, what types of notices do we provide neighbors, communities, in any places that they live close to a drug-free school zone that they may be targeted for the possession of drugs that are legal in the state of Arizona? And last is, if we have any data on students or community members being arrested in a Phoenix Union drug-free school zone. And so, yeah, I would really love to have a full report on that as we go into March, and seeing, what the different models can look like is really giving that thought, and also thinking about the community, right? Because not only are students, teachers, admin, and other support staff being impacted, but it's also our communities once we start expanding that. And then, I think overall, if I have to choose, especially with a potential cut of $55 million, is I would rather not spend that money on police, but would rather spend that money on students and make sure that there is teachers, make sure that there's admin, make sure that there's support staff still, and make sure that everything internally is good before we even think about expanding that money, especially thinking of that cut. So, thank you.
Member Hernandez, just to clarify, when you're asking the questions, are you asking for Dr. G to report now to the board only, or that, and you're asking for it to be presented to the safety, what is it called? The
Safety committee?
Safety committee as well.
So yeah, I'm asking for a full report on drug-free school zones for the March meeting, the school board March meeting.
President Ross and Board Member Hernandez, our team will give you all the information that you all need for drug-free school zones. I don't have that information off the top of my head, but we're happy to get that for you as well. And then I think the only other, we'll follow up on that. The only other thing that I would say, just for clarity on the regional model around, because I agree, Board Member Hernandez, if the idea of this community regional model is we're sending more police out into the community to cause, that's not the model. I want to make sure that the public is really clear about that. What I mean by community is a couple of things. One, when I say that they would understand and support that community, as we all know, there is activity in certain communities that's very specific to that community, whether that's fentanyl coming through the community, there's a new gang or street gang coming through that community, there's a rise in gun sales in that community. So it's not about sending law enforcement into that community, but it's about understanding that region better so we can see trends and patterns happening across that broader community. And the second thing within community that we don't have today is when we had SROs, families, because of fear of law enforcement, would come to the school and say, I'm not comfortable calling 911, but I know Officer Gonzalez at Chavez. I just had a break-in last night. Can I talk to him? Hey, I think there's abuse or neglect in my own household. I don't want to call 911, but I can talk to the local SRO. So when I mean community, it's not sending them out, but there are families that say, hey, I trust this officer more than this officer. And that could also be a part of this kind of regional-based model, that when families come, we will be able to help them, support them in that kind of a way. But thank you. We'll follow up on drug-free zones for sure.
Members, any other? Yes.
Thank you, President Ross. Dr. Gueston, with the regional model, I think I don't know if it was on one of the slides or not, but pricing-wise, I think it's been explained to me that's roughly $100,000 per officer. And so with a regional model of 3 regions, 2 officers per region, we're looking at about $600,000. Are there any operating expenses on top of that $600,000, either going into the IGA to the police department or, staffing and operating expenses from the school district to support the $600,000 for the officers?
President Ross, Governing Board, and Board Member Marquez, no, I think with one exception. So no, there are no other operating. So it's built, in the past, the IGA was school-based. In this particular model, it would be obviously regionally based. There's actually a very clear dollar amount. It is on average $100,000 per year per officer. Again, the city pays the rest at that point. The only other cost above and beyond that is if we do have an officer come to a sporting event or do extra duty, not within the workday, but if we have an issue at night, a football game, other coverage, that would be the only expense above and beyond that, but that's noted inside of there.
Do you have an estimate of what that might be, sort of planned?
No, but what we could do is give you an idea of how much we spent last year in off-duty support. Of course, as you've heard in the past, we're trying to continue to reduce that number. But yes, we'll give you a report, but I don't have an exact.
And then I guess just for clarification, you said anything above $600,000 the city could potentially pay for. And I guess my confusion there is that sort of where that 25 to 30% comes from, or grants? And is there a way to structure it so that the city is contributing to that $600,000 and grants are contributing to that $600,000? So we're, you know, the total cost of the program is 600,000, and then we're not paying that full 600,000.
So President Ross and board member Marquez. So of course I can't speak for the city.
Sure.
I do know that when an IGA is in place for officers, they do pay for whatever portion. I think when we think about this model, so yes, let's say the model's 700,000.
Okay.
So if you do the overtime, right, it's a $700,000 model. The city already is paying for that. So the truth is, it's a $900,000 model. The city's paying for 200 to get it down to 700, because they're paying the officers medical benefits, car, gas, retire. So the officer actually costs the city more than 100,000. They're paying for above and beyond that. So in this context, the model is a $900,000 program. The city's spending 200,000 to get it down to our cost, and then grants we believe could cover, honestly, up to all. But maybe it's half of that. So then this becomes a $350,000 program. Currently that's what we're spending in off-duty right now. So it's not even a more expensive model. In fact, it could be the cheapest model we've ever had if we do it right.
And then I know you can't speak for the city or the police department, and I guess my question is, for the school safety committee, has anybody from the police department been invited to those meetings? The chief, union representatives, the SSO, school safety officers, or SRO leads within the Phoenix Police Department?
Yeah, President Ross and Board Member Marquez, no, they haven't come, but Claudio, they will. There's actually been a request of the committee.
Yeah.
And after they've looked at the models a little bit more and have specific questions, then they actually will have officers at different levels come. We've already met with the city. They've said, absolutely, we'd love to send someone that understands the SRO program, the city. So once the committee's ready, the city has said, we will send you the officers that you need, not just officers, sergeants, lieutenant, whatever that might be, to answer the questions. But no, they have not had that yet.
And I know you can't speak for the city or the police department again, but I guess the questions I have is, you know, what and how are they willing to change under this new SRO model? And maybe that's questions the school safety committee can ask them. I'd like to hear that they're open to wearing plain clothes. Years past, I've requested that they're also unarmed if it's truly, you know, mandatory reporting requirements and mandatory law enforcement notifications, or they need to come out. So I hope those questions will be asked if the school safety committee has a chance to meet with representatives of the City of Phoenix Police Department. You sort of answered my question about the city match and potentially, you know, from a district standpoint, getting it down to a $0 district expense. Is that feasible or actually within the realm of possibility?
Depending on our grant writing success, could be, but I would also say, you know, I don't want to set up that expectation. We can guarantee we're going to get the grants for that, but you know, we do believe we can get this down to a few $100,000s out of our pocket. And when you think about us spending $35 million on all the other safety items, the $300,000 to $400,000 we feel is pretty reasonable. We think we can get that dollar amount down.
I guess, you know, one comment I have about, you know, the city, you know, putting up $200,000, you know, for the benefits of these officers. You know, in some ways, this feels like a, you know, I know it's an intergovernmental agreement, but it does feel like a client relationship, client-customer relationship, and you know, we're paying them for a service, which is we get, you know, I guess preferred access to call a specific number instead of Crime Stop, so that our staff can, you know, feel like they don't have to stay there all night waiting for something that the 911 operators might consider a minor priority in triage. But I guess I'm hoping that in conversations with the police department, it becomes a more equal partnership, like truly 50-50 partnership. And I guess my point there, and you know, I think you know my opinion pretty well, that it's a partnership to address school safety, recognizing that rules of engagement and protocols need to be put in place, and maybe our half of that partnership is not going to law enforcement peace officers, but to additional Phoenix Union staff that can interact and liaise and coordinate with those regional teams. And then, so lastly, I'll say, President Ross, I think when we first voted on this in June of 2021, when I first got onto the board, the comments that you made that night have really stuck with me on this issue. And to paraphrase, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have said more than once that I've heard, why are we propping up a failed system? And the failed system is our, police department. They got a lot of work to do to figure out whether we reimagine law enforcement in our communities. I know the superintendent and the school district staff's opinion is, we got to take care of our staff and the safety of our personnel and our families and our students. And even if it's a broken police system that's not perfect, and the SRO that responds, even if we give them all the training in the world, they're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. And inherent in, I don't know if board member Oliver would agree, but like inherent in the personnel that choose professions in law enforcement or in the military, that is not always the personnel you want responding to school safety incidents, even if they volunteered to say, hey, I want to go through that SSO program or the SRO program. So my challenge, Claudio, maybe taking this back to the school safety committee again is, if you have, let's call it a $900,000 program, I've asked staff to come up with a, $0 investment to law enforcement. And when I say that, I mean like directly paying and subsidizing the City of Phoenix Police Force to respond to calls they should respond to, because that's their role within our society, and they should respond to them better and more efficiently. But if you had $900,000 as a school safety committee, how would you spend that money for additional Phoenix Union staff to liaise and coordinate and, create a relationship with the Phoenix Police Department, recognizing that we need a relationship with the Phoenix Police Department to protect our students, our families, to navigate these, whether it's a Central High School incident or the day-to-day incidents that I think principals and staff are really dealing with that are really challenging within our communities for everybody. That's it. Thanks, President Ross.
And President Ross and Barbara Marquez, Claudio noted all those I know for things to bring back to the committee. And again, for the committee itself, they're looking at all these options, right? Tonight, we just wanted to share the one that's never been seen or done before, but they are looking at all those. Like what's a no cost? We've told you we're not recommending a no cost, no IGA. We believe we need a relationship. But the committee is looking at all of that. And so they are looking to see what could it look like.
You could have a no-cost IGA, right? Like we could create a like memorandum of understanding with the police department and say these are the protocols and this is how we'd like to interact with you.
Yep, President Ross, Board Member Marquez, we, again, not speaking for the city, but yeah, we have no-cost IGAs all across the city that are just rules of engagement, whether that's even student learning and what that looks like with community college system. So you can have IGAs for no money in many different contexts.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to come back to the GCI recommendations of that we need to ease into this, ease into these best practices, right? So it's not like we can pull everything and then expect that these rules of engagement and these relationships and this IGA will happen. We have to ease into this, especially with training. I heard a lot of why can't we have alternatives to police at our high schools? Why can't we use this money for this instead? And I would like to just lift up that there's nothing that says that we can't, and that our safety plan is a ever evolving set of policies, because our communities and our students evolve, right? So whatever we're doing now isn't going to be written in stone, and we can go forward and we can ease into these practices and have a goal to actually work towards, where we will not have a spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money that should go to teachers and students and to facilities, right? I remember this summer seeing after the monsoon season, somebody posted to Instagram the Carl Hayden student government room. It was just pouring rain, and they had this big trash can catching it, right? So where can we spend that money? And it's definitely in infrastructure. It's in our curriculum, and it's in our talent. But this is going to be a years-long process, right? This is going to be a years-long process, and I just wanted to lift that up.
Members, any? Okay. Dr. G, are you?
I'll be quiet.
Okay.
That's what you want me to do, right?
I did not say that. The next item is 9M, approval of the new classified job description, time clock specialist. Is there a motion to approve the new job description? A motion has been moved by Member Oliver and second by Member Marquez. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is 9N, adoption of statement of charges in the matter of employee M. Kilpatrick. Dr. G.
President Ross, members of the board, tonight we will remove this item officially from the agenda. You do not have to vote. We have entered into a resignation agreement, and this employee is on the discontinuance of employment as a resignation in lieu of termination, so no need to vote on this item tonight.
Thank you, Dr. G. The next item is 12B, adoption of revised governing board policy IMB, teaching about controversial sensitive issues on second reading. Is there a motion to adopt the revised governing board policy?
So moved.
Is there a second? A motion has been made by Mr. Marquez and a second by Ms. Oliver. Is there any discussion? On that motion, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. Item 13A, our next meeting. The next regular scheduled governing board meeting is on Thursday, March 2nd at 6 p.m. here at the district office. Item 13B, requests for future agenda items. Members, are there any items you would like to recommend to be considered for future board meetings?
Just one.
Yes,
Just one this month.
Come on, you're okay.
Well, Dr. Guest left, but I know you guys will write it down. I'd like to see, hopefully, it would be nice next month, but I understand that's not always feasible. But soon, this spring, I hope we can see an update on CTE programs in the district. And specifically, I'm hoping maybe Mr. Camp could present on CTE programs specific to pre-apprenticeship programs, potentially electrical and plumbing and pipe fitting.
Okay, and no pressure, and sorry to put you on the spot. Thank you, noted. Any other? Okay. Item 13C, motion to adjourn. Having concluded our business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion.
Is there a second? A motion has been made by Member Parr and second by Member Oliver. On this motion, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned.